Aloha and half a day. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, joining you from the World Tourism Network. I'm the chairman of the World Tourism Network, but I'm wearing two hats. I'm also here for eTobu News, Hawaii News Online, and our many different language editions we have around the world, and livestream.travel. With me today is Mary Rhodes, I believe, and she is one of our neighbors here in Hawaii. She's from Guam, but it's a neighbor far away. It's 7 hours flight from us. And she's the head of the Guam Hotel. It's a Hotel and Restaurant Association, I believe. And as you know, we're celebrating our heroes. And Mary is our first hero in Guam. And we're going to ask her a little bit to tell us a little bit about Guam, about herself, and why we made her a tourism hero, and what her role is in Guam. For those that don't know where Guam is, it's actually an island in the Pacific. It's part of the United States. It's not a full state, but it's a territory. And from what I understand, it's about 7 hours away from where I'm at, also in the Pacific, and from Hawaii. And it's about only an hour and a half flight from Manila. So from the tourism perspective, Guam is located ideally for anyone who wanted to see a tropical island and have an American experience in Australia, in New Zealand, in Korea, in Japan, China, and even the a remote part of Russia, Siberia, I believe, Vladivostok. You have people coming to Guam, and it's a beautiful part of the United States. Many people don't really aware it exists. So tell us a little bit more, and congratulations, Mary.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the great honor bestowed with eTobu News and with the World Tourism Network, and we're really excited. GHRA is turning 50 years old next year in 2022. So it's a nonprofit, non-government organization that works alongside the Guam Visitors Bureau for the tourism industry. So I know you said, the location of where it's at, and it's only 3 hours away from Japan, 3.5 hours from Korea. Same with Taipei, Taiwan, China. We do get a lot of tourists generally from those areas. Our record high has been close to 1.6 million tourists from all over Asia. We do have a small US market for tourism because we do have quite a number of military bases here on Guam. So Guam is always called the tip of the spear for the United States because we are the westernmost location for the United States. But because of our close proximity to Asia, we've really benefited from having both economies of scale with regards to tourism and managing our destination with a great geographic location close to within the middle of the Pacific. So tourism has really been around since the late 60s, early 70s on Guam. A lot of the hotels and airlines really started coming here around that time frame. But in almost 60 years, tourism has really grown, really developed. As I said, pre-COVID, our numbers were close to 1.6 million. We've done a lot of things during the pandemic as everywhere else in the world in trying to remain, relevant to the current situation and being able to be flexible and efficient enough to respond to the needs of the economy, the industry, a lot of the businesses and their employees, as well as any special programs that we have for any incoming tourists. Guam currently is, our vaccination rates are 86% for those who are in the working age of 16 and over. And so we do have a high vaccination rate for our adult population. When you consider our population of only 170,000 people, that's really a good number with regards to how many vaccines we've been able to bring here. But really, GHRA has led so many programs during this pandemic. We've led pandemic workshops with the Guam Visitors Bureau together with our Public Health and Social Services Division to ensure all of our businesses are ready to stand up during COVID. I do belong on the emergency operations group for the government, and I represent private sector. So pandemic plans are not new to us. We've had many different types of pandemics in the past outside of COVID-19. We all remember SARS, right? The avian flu, H1N1. So we have had always response plans to those. Obviously, COVID-19 coronavirus has been the longest to date and a lot more challenging. But a lot of the projects that we've led over the years, last 18 months is we really stood up for the military when the USS Roosevelt came to Guam. And it was the first model in which any large US ship, military or not, actually was able to deal with the coronavirus for the crew, and where they were able to safely disembark and stay on Guam during that period while people recovered, and they were also able to sanitize and disinfect the entire carrier. So the USS Roosevelt actually was such a significant project here on Guam, a huge effort from both military, government, federal government, local government efforts. And GHRA led that in that project. And it's kind of served as the model for all military ships and even foreign ships. And so we continue to see the US Roosevelt as well as other ships come to Guam. We've had major exercises here throughout the region in the Indo-Pacific region. And so we continue to have great partnerships with the military and with our federal and local partners. GHRA has also been a partner with the Guam, government of Guam, with the Public Health and Social Services Division with regards to rapid testing, outreach clinics, as well as vaccination clinics to get more people vaccinated, which is our goal was to vaccinate a lot of our employees with the industry and bring the testing outside of community testing at the workplace. And so we're going to be doing that for even rapid testing starting in 2 weeks, because vaccines are mandated for covered establishments in 2 weeks. And so there's a continuous set of responsibilities and outreach efforts and collaboration with the government, especially on how we need to offer solutions for our businesses and our employees to keep them safe as well as their guests.
And this is definitely a big task. And Guam is a small place, but it's a very sophisticated place. And I think that's why you recently announced from the Guam Visitors Bureau that you have charter flights coming in and regular flights coming in from Taiwan and from Korea for people that wanted to get vaccinated because they cannot really find the vaccination readily available in their home country. How does this work?
Well, we actually first targeted this towards any Americans who are expats working in any Asian country that needed to get vaccines, since the rollout was delayed as compared to where Guam was at or the United States. A lot of those key source markets have obviously picked up on their vaccination schedules, but the availability of who gets vaccinated first is always the challenge. So the Guam Visitors Bureau worked with public health as well as GHRA, our organization, to develop the Airbnb. So it's vaccine and vacation program. And so the Airbnb program, we work with public health with regards to getting the vaccines, and we work with a local clinic. They're called American Medical Clinic, and they handle all of the inoculations as well as all the health and safety protocols, and they provide the staffing. GHRA provides the administration portion, and we work with the tour agents to get them signed up prior to arrival, and then also take care of them while they're on Guam. So they actually test prior to arrival on Guam with a 72-hour PCR test. They also get tested upon arrival. Then as soon as they're negative upon arrival testing, then they're eligible to get the vaccine the next day. And then depending, we have 3 types of vaccinations available on Guam. We have the Johnson Janssen for the 1-day inoculation, and then we have the 2 series vaccines with Pfizer and Moderna. And so they have the option, they can go back to their home country immediately after the first dose, or they could stay and wait for the third dose, which would be a 21 to 28 week day period. So we have different programs, and we worked with all of our hotels, our transportation companies, as well as the clinic, to make sure that we created a safe bubble for all of our Airbnb tourists who are coming to Guam to get vaccinated. And so it's created long-term stay programs. It's helped increase revenues during a time where tourists are very limited in where they go with mobility, whether or not they're vaccinated. We also have launched a QR code. So it's a vaccine passport that with Airbnb, they can use it where they're going back home to country. And I know Japan just announced they're going to be moving to the vaccine passport as well. And so we have the documentation that's all digitized, and they can get hard copies as well as digital copies to take with them when they do return to their home country, or even plan to come back to Guam or any part of the US where they actually have their proof of vaccination. So all of those are included in the package. And I know that a lot of destinations have really been promoting vaccine tourism. And so it's really done well for us, especially in going into smaller markets where they've had, challenges in getting this out. So in addition to that, other than just tourists, like I said, we've opened it up to expats, Americans who are able to come back, US citizens able to come back to Guam and also get inoculated, so that they don't have to wait where they're home based at. And so, everything, while at the hotel, the packages are fully, equipped with their Wi-Fi packages so that they can work remotely on Guam. And then we actually have guidelines on what they cannot do while they're here as well. So they have to agree to that, as well as the agents. And so it's a very well managed program with the cooperation of the Public Health and Social Services Department together with GBB.
I didn't understand one part. I just wanted to clarify it. You mentioned Airbnb. That means guests coming in for this type of program, they're not staying in hotels. They're staying in private residence.
Oh, no, sorry. It's called Airbnb. So it's
I'm sorry. I
vacations.
misunderstood that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's vacations and vaccinations. So it's a twist, right, on the Airbnb. So GDB branded it as Air Vacations and Vaccination.
Okay. So they stay in hotels. It generates business for the hotels. It keeps people at their job in hotels. And what is wonderful, because the tourism industry obviously is the most hardest hit area, and it also encourages workers to actually are able to continue their job, and so they don't go elsewhere. Because what we find in many destinations is that there are really not enough people who still work in the hospitality industry because they have been looking for other jobs. So this is definitely something what I think is quite commendable. So how's this working out? Is it still ongoing, or this program?
Yeah, we've had several charter flights specifically from Taipei, Taiwan, as well as Korea. And so those programs have been going on since July. So we've been very, successful in having that launch. Now, recently, though, due to the Delta variant, we have gone through a bit of a change with regards to arrival process and dining. So the reasons why we were able to work with hotels is hotels were able to, agree to the guidelines in how to administer the Airbnb program within a hotel. So you had to, offer the services, and then Guam Visitors Bureau and GHRA had to work together to really approve and to vet out the process with the hotels. Now, what's challenging for us with the Delta variant is there's a recent government mandate where you have to be vaccinated in order to dine in. So with Airbnb, they obviously would have to take out or do takeaway or in-room service and not be able to dine in at all until the end of their full vaccination, meaning 14 days after being inoculated. So that has been a little bit of a challenge recently, because, you know, our protocol was to allow them within their first day of getting vaccinated. But so we're working through that. And I think this is only through the Delta surge that we're experiencing at this time. And then we hope that that will subside and we'll be able to restart the program, you know, confidently going out to other markets. I know Indonesia, Thailand, they've also shared some interest. So, but definitely for Korea and even for Taipei, it's been a great program.
Yeah, and I can tell you here at World Tourism Network, we actually had a discussion with the Ministry of Tourism in Indonesia. They've been very active and they ask us about this program. So it looks like people know about it and it is an option. Our chairman for the World Tourism Network in Jakarta, Moody Astudi, said she would go. How can I get to Guam? So I think the countries where a vaccine is still low, and specifically among the expat community, and maybe not only Americans, because you took care of Americans already. I know, for instance, our chairman for the Malaysia chapter we have, he's German. And he's not vaccinated yet because Malaysia only wants to vaccinate their own citizens first. So I think you really have a market here, and it's quite interesting. But tell me, since we're talking about all of this, one of our bigger challenges here in Hawaii is probably the same challenge you face in Guam and people face in Florida and in many other markets in the US and also abroad, is the Delta virus and the spike. I cannot fully understand is with such a high rate of vaccination, you mentioned in the 80%, we in Hawaii, we say we're approaching 70%. Our numbers when a year ago, I remember in Hawaii, we closed everything down when we hit 100 new cases every day. It was, there was not one shop anymore open except for grocery stores. Restaurants were closed, hotels were closed. You can go to Kalakaua Avenue where you have thousands of people on the street every night and you can sleep in the middle of the road and you probably wouldn't be bothered. Now we have close to 1,000 cases a day and it appears business is as normal. The restaurants are open, the hotels are open, tourists are coming in record numbers. How do you explain this? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, you know, of course, had pent up desire to go travel, and Hawaii has not, you know, Governor Ige was not, hasn't restricted those access points. What they did was really work on all of their pre-entry requirements, right? And so by uploading your vaccine card, you can also use mobile applications like Clear or Common Pass. It's very easy to apply for entry to go into Hawaii once you're vaccinated. I think that it's interesting that they haven't scaled back or restricted access because Guam has, and I know Saipan, a neighboring island to us, Commonwealth and Northern Mariana Islands, they also scaled back. They're actually doing quarantine again upon arrival for 5 days, regardless if you're vaccinated or not. And I think a lot of it is because the Delta variant, a lot of people haven't been approved for the booster, their third shot. And also the Delta variant is, although you could possibly get it regardless of being vaccinated, the symptoms are less, right? Less complex and they're mild. But, you know, right now, of all our hospitalizations, I think we're about 50% vaccinated and 50% unvaccinated in the hospital. But those who are in the ICU are all unvaccinated. And I think that's the challenge, is the Delta variant is really, you know, the symptoms and the issues of getting COVID and being unvaccinated are much greater than if you were to be vaccinated. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing is we need to, FDA and the CDC need to push out the boosters, I think, faster, because that's why probably immunity is probably starting to wane off on your initial vaccine. And so the booster probably needs to be implemented sooner than later because of the Delta variant. And then that's how you get more variants, right? And there are additional variants now, even further along past Delta. But I think between Hawaii, Guam, and the CNMI, our Northern Island friends, they've all reacted a little differently, but with still the same precautions in the fact that, because I know that Governor Ige did put the notice out to restrict travel to Hawaii. But I don't think the CDC has put an alert, right, to Hawaii. What is their current level right now?
Well,
in
I
Hawaii?
don't think, from what I understand, federal law doesn't allow this, to restrict, to just say you cannot go. The quarantine, it technically is still in effect. But if you can show a PCR
Proof.
test, and if
Right.
you are vaccinated, you override the requirement of the quarantine. So from a tourism perspective, specifically for US domestic tourism, it's not restricted. But,
Right.
and if you really look at the numbers, and it may be true for Guam and Florida and some others as well, it's quite shocking, because if you're considering that you have a good percentage vaccinated, they really don't, for the most part, get sick on COVID. And these numbers are so high, just with the smaller percentage that is left and unvaccinated, that is scary.
Mhm.
So I agree with
Right.
you that there should be restrictions in place, and the quarantine restriction Guam has in place, again, shows leadership. Maybe we need in Hawaii as well. And if you look today, or just corresponded with the Honorable Minister Bartlett in Jamaica, the United States put a travel warning against Jamaica, also against Bahamas, of level 4. And level 4 is the travel warnings we would expect for countries like North Korea or Afghanistan or Libya.
Right.
And then if you really analyze the numbers, it's a lot worse in Hawaii and in Florida than in Jamaica. So I think we need to all learn how to deal with this. And maybe one thing we're working on with World Tourism Network is to suggest a different system when it comes to travel advisory. There should be a travel advisory for COVID, what should distinguish between vaccinated and not vaccinated. And there should be a travel advisory for safety and security and other political issues. And because you really cannot combine all of this. And of course, Guam being a domestic destination, it's part of the United States, it becomes a whole different issue altogether.
You know, you say that, but if you look up CDC, they do rate Guam, interestingly enough, because it's not a state. So it is rated. And because of our recent COVID surge, they put us at level 4. And this is something GBB's been trying to tackle for a long time, because to be fair, we should not be rated, although it is international travel, same as Hawaii, right? They have international travel, same with Puerto Rico. So Guam really should be considered a domestic with regards to CDC, but we all know most of our tourists, majority, if not all, come from international travelers from outside of the US. And so that's why Guam is part of that listing with the CDC, and GBB has been trying to get us off that list for some time now, because it doesn't meet the criteria of what the CDC looks at, similar to Hawaii, because Hawaii has a big mix of international travelers plus domestic travelers. And so GBB is currently been challenged with that. And Guam in general has been challenged with being listed on the CDC travel alerts.
Well,
so I agree with you. There needs to be another system. Maybe that one is more just more international, right? Like with all the international travel partners that we can refer to, and not just the CDC.
I have not heard one country in the world that is slamming their own country on an international travel warning list. So I did not know about this, but I find this, personally, I have to say, outrageous.
Yeah.
Guam is part of the United States. Hawaii is part of the United States. It cannot, Arizona is part of the United States. If there is a domestic rating system, yes, absolutely, we should
Right.
put this in place. But to put it on an international level 4 and to make Guam as scary as Afghanistan is at this time, that is completely unacceptable. And I did not know, because Guam doesn't have an embassy in Washington. You only have a congressman to fight this. So this is really an interesting story, and I can tell you that's something I think we really need to report about, maybe together also with the situation in the Bahamas and Jamaica that makes the system so absolutely utterly ridiculous. And this is my personal opinion now, of course. But I agree with you, and I didn't know about this. This is quite interesting. And of course, our tourism here in Hawaii is mostly domestic. If you look at the numbers, and they went down a little bit because Governor Ige encouraged people not to come here. And but before he said this, our numbers were record arrivals. Even in the absence of most of the international travel, we had higher arrivals in the state from domestic new markets. We have nonstop flights now to Austin, Texas, to Orlando, Florida, all destinations we never even looked at from a tourism standpoint before. And this is all business, of course, that is lost in the Caribbean and in other parts of the world. So it's not a fair system. And but Guam definitely should have a different standing. I completely agree with you. And I'm sorry, we're talking about you being a tourism hero, and now everyone can see why you're a hero, because you really show this leadership, and you see the world from a global perspective. And I think this is so important these days, because everyone in the world is kind of in the same boat. We're all fighting it. We're fighting it with different ways, and the coordination is simply not there. We have not made a secret out of our, I would say, almost discussed with the World Tourism Organization, with UNWTO, how counterproductive that organization has been through this. We have praised the World Travel and Tourism Council many times about showing leadership. So all of us really need to work together. This is a global problem. It's a global issue. Pointing fingers at one and the other is not really resolving it, but coming with global solutions, vaccination passports that are actually accepted all over the world could be a very, very good step. But regardless, and
you know, speaking of that, even the passport that we've been working on is actually even part of BCI, which is the other organization that has come together because there are so many iterations of vaccine passports, right? So we made sure that we looked at one that is part of BCI, so it would look at across the board throughout the nation as well as international acceptance.
And that's very important. You mentioned something some of our viewers and listeners and readers may not fully understand. You mentioned another region in close to Guam, and it's it's Saipan, and these are some other islands that are that have their own standing, but they're also part of the United States. And so there's Guam, and there is Saipan, and incorporated even into a different type of CMCI or
CNMI. It's
CNMI.
The Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands.
Northern Mariana. Yes.
Right. The Marianas is made up of several islands. It's a chain. And so the CNMI is a Commonwealth under the United States now. It's been federalized for some time now. And Guam is technically a territory similar to Puerto Rico. And so CNMI is still part of the United States. They also have a congressman in DC. And so we have similar types of positioning with regards to federal funding, having a seat within the House, as well as you know, having a governor, and also there's just some small variations between what a Commonwealth and a territory are, but definitely Guam has, you know, we do share a lot of ideas. We're very close with one another as far as proximity, especially being nearby, and similar to Hawaii. So our markets are a little different though, of what each island has chosen to, promote to, as far as where their key source markets are, as far as, promoting yourself as a destination. But certainly Guam has a much higher total number as well as capacity, because we are a much larger island. But Guam definitely has been around for a long time, and definitely looking forward to when we can get through this pandemic period with coronavirus and continue to start revitalizing our destination and looking at sustainable and reliable ways to compete within our Southeast Asian markets.
Yeah, and Guam, maybe tell us just a little bit about what is there to do in Guam. And when you travel to Guam, why would you be traveling to Guam?
Well, again, all the islands have the same thing, right? Sun, sand, beach, lots of water sports, day activities, evening activities with nightlife. So we have a lot of similarities with any kind of island resort destination. But Guam really, what we boast is, it is a US destination. So we really promote a lot of safety in the fact that when you do fly to Guam, it is a safe destination. Crime is not high, but also it's very close to Korea, Japan, Taipei, much closer and even less expensive than if you were to travel further abroad into the US. And so considering that Hawaii and Guam are, it's 7 hours like one way, but with the trade winds, it's 8 the other way. And so it really adds a lot of time to sometimes only 3 to 5 day stays. And so Guam tends to get a lot of the short-term travelers coming from within the region. And just our proximity again within Pacific, the Pacific Ocean, it's a lot closer to those areas. But other than that, I mean, Guam has a lot of cultural arts. We have a cultural heritage that is has a history of Spanish influence, but also our own island influence that, of course, everybody knows, is throughout Melanesia or through Polynesia, all of those influences and fusions of different cultures of different island nations around the Pacific Ocean. And so Guam has our Chamorro heritage. The people and the language are both called Chamorro. I'm actually native to Guam. I lived in the United States, mainland US, for 15 years, went to university out there, but I am native to the island. And so we have, a lot of things that really are our language, our food, our music, our festivals. A lot of them are very different. So it's a unique identity within the Pacific Ocean, Pacific region that I think a lot of people value, and especially it being so close to where they are. So of course, again, like I said, we do have a lot of resorts. GHRA alone in our Hotel Restaurant Association, we have 28 hotels on the island. Total room capacity is well over 8,000. We have 2 new hotels coming up, new resorts, and that doesn't even count all of our motels and short-term stay hotels, as well as Airbnb. And then we have so many options for restaurants because we are a melting pot. Although Chamorro people are Asia Pacific Islander, we do have a lot of huge Filipino population here, more than 30%. Our Asian population made up of Japanese, Koreans and Chinese are over 15%. And so of course, a lot of military, like I said, again, military alone is about, I believe, over 17,000 out of the 170. So it is quite diverse. And so you can only imagine the great different restaurants that we have. And we have hundreds of restaurants on the island with all the optional tours. We have tons of optional tours for day and nighttime, water sports, entertainment. And then we do have a couple of malls, and transportation is fairly easy. We have a lot of trolleys similar to Hawaii, where they do provide transportation around the key areas and what you would consider, right? We have the gig economy with the shared service of ordering a car if you need it, as well as taxi service. So we also have bus transportation. So it's very easy to get around. The island is only 33 miles long. If you went around it, it only takes about 2.5 hours. And we do have northern, southern sites and tons of landmarks that are very World War II era, very important landmarks that were important for not just World War II, but our Spanish occupation, Japanese occupation, and US occupation. So we're very rich in history.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's a place, and I've been to Guam a number of times. It's like you like a sister island of Hawaii. I mean, you even find the first Hawaiian bank and the Bank of Hawaii. It's very
Yes.
similar, and you can actually watch, at least when I was there, I watched Hawaii television besides others. So yes, there's a lot of similarities in Guam. The only thing I've always been quite surprised is you're very close to Asia. Flights from Asia, now we're talking about normal times, so it may be all changed.
Right.
But normal times are quite inexpensive. You can go to the Philippines, you can go to Australia, to Hong Kong. And I don't know if this is still the case. People from countries that usually need visas to the United States may not actually need a visa if they only to go to Guam, because there was a parole system in place.
Correct.
I don't know if this is still the case. I'm wondering, is this still the case? Okay.
Yeah, Guam was the first, I believe, U.S. destination to have the parole system for Korea before it opened up. And I think it only opened up, I want to say, almost 10 years ago to the rest of the U.S., but Guam had that for a very long time under a parole program for a tourist visa. And then, or no, free visa. You don't have to apply for a tourist visa. And then we were trying to do that actually with Vladivostok in Russia, as well as trying to get that from China. That never went through for China. But there are special visas that if you are already approved anywhere from China, or it's other countries, or I'm sorry, other places like Hong Kong and Taipei, they definitely, if you have a visa already for the US for travel, for business or pleasure, you can have that up to 1 year. And so anyone can use their same visa to travel to a US destination like Guam or Hawaii as well. And so Saipan actually does have special parole programs like with China. And so they're very different than Guam, because they have also other types of visas that are allowable there, like a contract worker visa. So Saipan, the CNMI, is a little different in that with Guam and their visa status. But Guam still follows Region 9 out of the US. And so we've had some exceptions in the past. But right now we don't currently have any exceptions outside of what the mainland US have now.
Yeah, and that's possible, of course, because when you leave Guam, even if you fly to like Hawaii, you need to show your passport, or at least a driver's license. You have to show that you're a US citizen or you're legally in the United States. So it's not completely domestic, it's kind of in between. Now, the only thing also what is quite difficult for Guam, and I hope that's something tourism officials in Guam keep addressing, is the monopoly United Airlines has in domestic travel. And I love United Airlines. I'm a 3 million mile 1K flyer, and I've been the same with Continental before it became United. When I worked in Indonesia, I went through Guam almost every month. And and it's still like it, because if you go, for instance, from the US mainland, or you go from Hawaii to destinations that are beyond Guam, it's quite inexpensive. You can go on United. Like I remember I went to the Philippines through Guam, but you couldn't stop in Guam, and it was like a $399 round trip special. It was incredibly cheap. But when you wanted to get off in Guam, this $399 fare became an almost $2,000 fare, what is more than a trip to Europe, what is from here on the other side of the world. So United having the monopoly also has a monopoly on airfares, what I think makes tourism, domestic tourism, almost impossible. How do you guys address this?
Yeah, we've tried over the years. You know, the airlift capacity is very challenging. We used to have Delta, Northwest. We've had, boy, if you take it back to the 70s, we had Braniff, we had Pan Am, we had all of the big airlines come through. But Continental United Airlines has stayed, and Guam was actually considered a hub for a very long time for the region. They actually had planes sitting here. They had their own inventory, so it was considered a hub and a main connector, right? Like to a lot of other places, like for Hong Kong, even Fiji. They've had it to Fiji, Okinawa, different locations, and it's not just on the domestic route. There's also some key things that GBB has tried to work on with regards to even foreign carriers, like from Japan, where we aren't able to fly into Haneda, right? Because of you have departure tax and there's cabotage there. So there's challenges certainly with access, airlift capacity, and even pricing. So that's why Guam it's very challenging on the price and also availability of flights. So you have to be able to, like what you did earlier, right? Or what one point was buy round trip tickets or maybe one way from different destinations, knowing that it's probably less expensive that route than to purchase a multi-city ticket in between Guam, because then your price does exponentially increase. So it is a challenge. It always has been a challenge. And United used to have, I believe they used to fly to as high as probably 13 different destinations. Now, of course, because of COVID, it's limited cities and limited frequency per week. And so the flight schedules have been a challenge, but we're looking forward to when those announcements will be made where they'll consider more flights to Guam. And even from our international carriers, we still have, Japan Airlines. I know that they've continued to shift to the right. I believe the last notice we got is through October for now. Same with Korean Airlines, T-Ways, EVA Airlines. We've had a lot of charter flights here from Korea and Taipei. So charter flights are available, but we also have regular frequency on daily flights from a lot of our Korean airlines, because Korea actually is one of our largest markets outside of Japan.
Yeah, and it's and maybe just a tip for those that wanted to go to Guam and are flyers on United and have some miles. When you actually use your miles, and I've done this going to Guam, the mileage is quite a bit lower than to Asia or to Europe, even though it's a longer flight. So it's really worth a destination to use your miles. So if you have never been to Guam and you have a few miles left on United, just use your miles to Guam. You really get your money's worth.
Yeah, because we're still considered domestic for them.
Exactly.
As long as you fly in from Hawaii, not Japan, not through Narita.
Right. But in any ways, Mary, this has been a fascinating conversation, a lot longer than we have planned, but I think it's really worthwhile. And I think our listeners and our readers and our members really enjoyed seeing you. And I hope we can welcome you as a member also soon at World Tourism Network. And we love you guys in Guam. And thank you so much for what you're doing for the travel and tourism industry, not only in Guam, but worldwide. And it does make a difference. I think we all stick together and come up with ideas. And the industry is only as good as our leaders. And all of us are leaders these days. Zoom makes it possible. But
yep.
I think
absolutely. Yeah, as much as we can connect, I think membership with the World Tourism Network, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not just the president of the Guam Hotel Restaurant Association, I'm also the president of Skull Club of Guam. So we have a Skull Club here on the island. We also have our other partners with GBB and all the other organizations. They belong to like WTTC. So we certainly look forward to signing up with the WTN and really appreciate the opportunity and the recognition to literally put Guam on the map. So thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And SCOL, of course, is one of our members as well. We have many people in the SCOL system that are contributing to the World Tourism Network. We love SCOL. I'm a SCOL member, and so is the World Travel and Tourism Council. There will be an announcement coming very soon about how WTN will work with WTTC. So we're all building a good community. And of course, we love to have Guam to be part of it. And you're definitely on the map for us. And we know where to find you. And please stay safe. And again, congratulations, Mary. And half a day, I think you guys call it.
Well, we say half a day for welcome. It doesn't work like aloha where it's good, hello and goodbye, right?
Okay.
So half a day is we welcome you. And so that's more of a welcome. And then we say adios. Adios is, I believe, Spanish. Yeah, it's Spanish. So we say adios. And then estiki is adios, estiki is we'll see you later.
Okay, from this part of the world, I say aloha. To everyone else, good evening, good morning, or wherever you are. And and let's all plan our next trip to Guam. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.